Hi, Dan. Hi, Robert. I'm Christopher Gallardo with Pop Alternative. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing great. How are you?
Fantastic.
I'm doing good myself. So to get this started, I want to get this started with a fun question. What's both of your favorite action movie kills or takedowns?
Oof.
Favorite action movie kills or takedowns? I guess I'll go with is it is it the end of Lethal Weapon, the 3-hour fist fight on the front lawn?
Oh yeah.
Exactly. I'll
I'll
go with that. Yeah, just because it's so outrageous. The entire LAPD is watching for the longest, most protracted fight scene that you've ever seen.
Yeah, I think that I'd probably have to go with like the T-1000 doing like the finger kill through the security guard at the psych ward in Terminator 2, just because it was so brutal and you hadn't really thought of that as a way that bad guy could kill somebody yet, and just the way that the guy's kind of convulsing there for a second and the sound design of that moment, it's really hard to watch that and not go,
Ooh, I love those answers. And you guys really put in the work with creating some of the most brutal action sequences I've ever seen in an action movie in a way that's got this Deadpool, John Wick-esque vibe to it, while sort of elevating it in your own sort of way. So as directors and filmmakers, how have you been impacted by a single action sequence from other films like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon? And how did that scene stick with you as you were filming these sequences?
Sure, yeah. So, we talk a lot about Die Hard and Lethal Weapon as like tonal comps for this movie, just because both of those movies are really funny, but it's not just a comedy. They still have stakes. They still have like characters that you really care about. They both kind of take their time developing those characters. And so that was very similar. In terms of the action itself, a movie that we looked at a lot was Upgrade, because in Upgrade he's kind of there's a shtick to those fight scenes, right? Like his body is doing one thing and his face is doing another. He's fighting a guy but he's apologizing at the same time. And so there was a very similar thing that we were doing here in Novocaine, where Jack had to sort of learn how to disconnect the wince reflex from his body. He had to be able to get punched but not show any pain. And yet it's not like the T-1000 where he can't feel anything, or he shows no emotion rather. There's still fear, there's still worry, there's all these other things going on. You didn't want him to seem robotic, and so getting that just right was a really fun bit of chemistry that Jack and our stunt coordinator Stanimir Stamatov had to work on.
Definitely. And of course, also both of you must have looked back on some of your own previous works to help you sort of envision what some of those action scenes would also look like. So was there any scene from a film that you both directed before that really influenced your vision for a particular moment in this film?
I don't know if our previous films had a sufficient level of choreographed stunt work to influence it too much, but we had pulled some fingernails off of fingers before in our second movie, The Stakelander. So that prosthetic to do was not particularly intimidating. I think that we might have pulled more fingernails off of fingers than any other directors at this point, which is a strange award to have.
If you did it more than us, it's really weird.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and just from those fingernails, with all of the practical effects as well, they're just absolutely amazing and disgusting in sort of this good way, with all of the emphasis on Nate's injuries. Clinton Aiden Smith, who's obviously your prosthetic designer, did such a fantastic job with creating those effects for Nate, and with some of those visual focuses that we get on those injuries. How do you both decide whether to go all in on showing some of those effects, or deciding that it can be a little bit too much for the viewer?
I think it's great that you shouted out Clinton, because he is the kind of mad scientist behind so much of the grisly violence in this movie. I think it was really important for us to have this movie have as many practical effects as possible. A, because that just looks better, and B, because we knew that we were going to be showing so much of this kind of in close-up, I think other action movies, your protagonist might take a hit here or there, take a wound here or there, but maybe you're not getting that close-up shot of it. But so much of what the engine of this movie is kind of the juxtaposition of the goriness of the injury to his lack of reaction, and so to really sell that, you wanted those injuries to be as gruesome as possible, and that was kind of our rule of thumb. Was we always wanted to show that injury like maybe a half beat longer than another movie might, where it's just a little bit more, but not so much that it, grosses people out and they want to leave the theater, And luckily, because the main character can't feel pain and he's not crying out every time he has a flesh wound or breaks a bone, it gives you, the audience member, kind of permission to laugh and have fun and stuff like that. So yeah, that was something that was always like, kind of the secret ingredient.
Definitely. And when I was in the theater watching it with my friend, whenever like those zoom ins to those sort of prosthetic effects were just like, it got some visible, like, oh, it's so disgusting. And it was just like so really shocking. Did you ever get any of those reactions when you were like screening this to like your test audiences, to like anyone who's seen this film before it's released too?
Oh yeah, I mean, that was some of the most validating moments for us were when we were test screening the movie. And our first test screening certainly it felt like a rock concert, like it's just every time, I mean, it's not just the test screenings, we've now shown it to a bunch of public audiences too, and every single screening is a total riot. It's just people screaming and gasping and laughing. And that's exactly what we wanted it to be. We designed for this movie to be a theatrical experience, to be enjoyed in a movie theater surrounded by people. We want people to be watching through their fingers and grabbing the person next to them and squeezing. And, we want it to feel experiential, and we did a lot to make you see the film through Nate's eyes so that when he is experiencing all of this horrible violence, even though he can't feel it, we still want your mirror synapses to be firing as if it's happening to you. And it seems, based on the audience reaction so far, that we succeeded in that.
Definitely. I love that you guys put so much into the practical effects. And another practical effect that I also wanted to talk about is the tattoo prosthetics, because that design is just so intricately well put together. And it not only did it look incredible, but it actually laid out those story beats really quite nicely. So how long did it come up with the idea for the tattoo to have Quaid in those tattoos, and were there any other ideas for that practical effect that you guys wanted to try out?
We spent a lot of time just kind of trying to design the story that's taking place within this kind of mural-esque tattoo that he has. And so, we wanted it to be this fantasy tale of a knight who's, the maiden is taken by an evil wizard and he's chasing them throughout the kingdom and has to save her in this spire and everything. And so it was great to just work with our illustrator, who was actually our storyboard artist, on that, and kind of come up with the design. But then the tattoo itself was a completely other beast, because you had to, it was made up of just dozens of different sections that had to all be perfectly laid onto Jack's body and applied. And so he had to lay there in a chair for hours and hours getting this thing applied. And, he just had the patience of a saint to be able to do it. And luckily that full tattoo only played on a few of those days. But those days, I mean, that was hours in the chair. When we first tested the tattoo, I think it took 7 or 8 hours to get it on him. And so you can only imagine the psychological torture it is to kind of have to lay there in a chair for an entire workday, surrounded by all these different people touching your body and, having to put spraying you with water and putting these little stick-on tattoos and stuff. But luckily, the final product looks awesome, and it was, we hope, worth it for Jack.
Definitely. That tattoo process is just, in this film, from the beginning where he's just showing off the tattoos to just him in the parlor, and that just entire sequence playing out is just perfectly put together. And
thank you,
speaking
man.
about No problem. And speaking about sort of that story beat as well, Novocaine's got this really unique concept because he's essentially your modern day take on Achilles. As you were both expanding upon this concept and as you were directing the film, how did you approach balancing his invincibility with sort of this relatable human vulnerability? And what do you think was the most challenging aspect about staying true to that concept?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was always very important to remember and to note that while he can't feel pain, he is not invulnerable, and so that was a whole process of making sure we were adhering to that as a real pillar because, when we first got the script, there were a lot more, like head hits and sort of pistol whips in the temple and things that would knock him out or perhaps kill him. And we worked with our stunt coordinators and, really audited every hit to ensure that maybe some of those head hits should be transferred to body hits because we didn't want you to think that he was invulnerable. That is what makes the condition debilitating. He's just as fragile as anyone else. And, balancing that with the relatability was kind of an easy thing because the other component that makes this a unique action hero is that he doesn't know how to fight. That makes him so relatable. Bobby and I don't know how to fight, and so we can map our own experience onto Nate's, and that allows you to take a character who has an incredibly rare disorder that makes him really, really unique, but also make him feel like you or me, So it's sort of that duality to his character that makes him, both stand out amidst a pretty crowded action field, but also makes him feel like a guy who could live in your building.
Definitely. I just love having that entire story explored. I know that Nathan Kane is essentially your version of a superhero because he's got these Deadpool-esque abilities with Hughie's personality, but if there was any comic book superhero that you'd want to direct for, which one would it be?
Oof. Yeah, it's so hard because so many movies have been made, I mean, I loved Silver Surfer as a kid. I loved, I love Watchmen, but obviously that's been done a couple times. And
we always say like Constantine is like really, really awesome, but there's already a sequel that's in development or maybe it's already been shot. So it's a little tricky. I mean, I think there's a reason, of course, that, the balloon, the air is being let out of the balloon a little bit on all the superhero stuff, just because I think we've pretty sufficiently mined the major storylines at this point as a society. But yeah, listen, who knows? Maybe if this does really well, we'll get an opportunity to make our superhero movie, and we'll let you know.
Definitely. Well, I can't wait to see you guys again in the future. Dan, Robert, thank you so much for your time. It's been a wonderful pleasure talking to you, and really hope that you both have a wonderful day. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Man.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.